Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, it looks like it's 1:35, so I think we'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Heidi is unable to join us, so I'm going to do my best to fill in for her and hope that my more experienced colleagues correct me along the way. We'll call this meeting to order, and to start, will you share the screen that shows how the public can comment or participate?
Yes, give me just one moment.
All right, if you are in the audience and at the appropriate times have public comment, I just ask you to raise your hand and we'll recognize you. If you are using if you are calling in, you can press *9 to raise your hand and we will recognize you at the appropriate time. You can also share or comment with the City Council by emailing council@ci.missoula.mt.us or leave the council a voicemail at 552-6012. You can go ahead and take that down, and if you're ready, take a roll call, please.
Okay. Anderson. Anderson. Absent. Becerra.
Present.
Okay. Carlino.
Present.
Contos.
He's absent today.
Thank you. Hess.
Present.
Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Nugent.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
Cheryl. Absent.
Present. Nope, I'm
He's
here.
here.
Sorry. Gotcha. Vasika.
Present.
West.
And she's absent today.
And we have a quorum present.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First order of business is to approve the minutes from our last scheduled meeting. So unless there are any changes, and Ms. Cheryl, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't see any minutes attached. Just want to make sure.
This is our first meeting of the HRCP, so we will not have any minutes to approve until the next meeting.
So do we have minutes from, what's the committee that this was replacing? No, Jordan?
Admin.
Well, it was kind of a hybrid of administration and finance and LUP and committee of the whole. So this truly is a new committee, but it's some things from all of those committees.
Perfect. So we're going to leave nothing hanging out there. All right. We will call for public comment on any items not on the agenda. If you have public comment, you can raise your hand. Not seeing anything from anybody. So we will move right into committee business. And first up is referral for the Scott Street property update by Good Works, and is Mr. Bickle on?
Dale's not able to be here today.
All right, John, are you then leading us on this?
I believe Kai will speak for himself. Kai, are you online?
I'm promoting him. Sorry. Kai, you should be able to unmute yourself.
All right, there we go.
There we go.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen here and walk through this. At any point, if you guys have questions on a specific slide, just please raise your hand, stop me, and we'll discuss the topics as we move through it. As some of you know and have been more involved in this process than others, GoodWorks stepped in and in late 20, we started discussing with the city, and in 21, we put the LOI together. We created GoodWorks Development and Rivara Development as the special purpose entity for this project. We really looked at, we wanted some meaning behind the name, and Rivara is raw material, and it's a former white pine sash site up there, and we were creating something new for the neighborhood that's missing middle housing and bringing amenities to the place. And so that's where Rivara comes from. In terms of the timeline, as I mentioned, August of 20, we started discussing, you guys acquired the parcel. In February 21, we officially signed the LOI for the 9 acres where Rivara took the role as master developer. In April of 21, Ellen and the MRA board approved the master plan funding, which we set out on a process of engaging the public. That was kicked off then in May of 21. We had Cushing Terrell provide those services for us, as well as WGM and Tetra Tech provide some geotech services through that process as well. Then in January of 22, the MRA board approved the public right-of-way design, infrastructure, and engineering funding. And then in April of 22, City Council approved the soft cost loan that allows us to create the construction documents that we can go to permit, as well as get construction bids off of. A key piece of this was really the partnership in this process and who's been involved. This is not something that was done by ourselves. We couldn't do it without our development partners. Really in this process and trying to bring a new model to Missoula, there was challenges that both the staff at the city helped us work through in terms of entitlement. And every day we keep solving those problems and keep moving this project forward to deliver something that's really important to the neighborhood as well as the whole community. As far as the neighborhood engagement goes, the north side, west side has a strong neighborhood voice, and they've been very active in this process. Crew was our neighborhood group that we worked with to really get the word out. They did substantial door knocking for these meetings and tried to engage everyone, whether they were in person or remote. We put out a survey, which postcards were handed out to the neighborhood. And, coming out of the world of COVID, as we all know, the in-person meeting in July was, as you can see from those photos, substantial. It was the largest amount of people I'd been around in a very long time, but it was also amazing to see the turnout and the engagement in what this community and neighborhood is becoming. On 9/1, we presented the results from that, and we took community feedback and really tried to incorporate that into our drawings. As far as the results go, in terms of the neighborhood survey, we really wanted to understand, what was important from a look, feel of what we're developing there, because it is a substantial development in the neighborhood and will have substantial impact on Scott Street. Additionally, we wanted to figure out what the concerns are, and there's always concerns with development. And these are some of the words and that came out of that process. As well as what are the things that people want to see as we progress forward as a community and a neighborhood. Through that process, both engaging in person surveys, as well as our second meeting, we learned that it was really important for green space. And you'll see later on how we've been able to preserve substantial green space on the site through some strategic work with the city. We're looking at bringing in medium density homes for the community land trust. And really looking at how do we engage and bring the community also into that green space. It's not just a space for the direct residents. It's really a space for everyone to come participate on and engage. Clearly, traffic is always a concern for every neighborhood as developments grow. And worked with WGM on a traffic study and Public Works on what are the things that need to be done to continue to mitigate and manage in the neighborhood. Also, really not building something that that lasts. It's high quality, that engages in the history of the site, that progresses it forward, but also pays homage to what was there and the industrial nature of White Pine Sash. For us from day one, how do we manage costs, durability, and beauty? Bringing a balance to a development that is, while maintaining price points that are affordable and attainable, but also using materials that can last the test of time, that are also a great place to live. And so we're not just slapping up homes, but really trying to create something that is meaningful for somebody to live in. As far as White Pine Sash goes, this was a fantastic aerial photo of the site and what it used to be, and really seeing the industrial nature of that. And Scott Street is once a dirt road, which is always fun to look back at the history and what it used to be and how we've progressed. Through that process in the master planning, we looked at a number of different configurations, and we found it best to continue the street grid layout and bring Charlotte Street across, creating the multiple tracks. On track 2 is where the community land trust will sit. Right now, it's looking like we'll have 74 community land trust homes that will include townhomes as well as condominiums with studios and 1 and 2 beds. Inside of the condos, we'll have ADA units as well. On track 3 is the market rate portion of that. And with that, we're looking between 240 and 250 apartments. Substantial commercial space, which is scheduled to include, a potential, neighborhood market concept. So folks can walk and get eggs, milk, and the necessities, as well as a sandwich. Bringing in some food retail opportunities as well, along with beverage. We know since the closure of the tap house up north that the neighborhood has communicated to us that it's important to have a place to meet their friends and family and engage outside of their homes. Another key piece of this was really around the daycare. It was embodied in the LOI, and that bringing childcare facility to the site was crucial. And so we've included that in the market rate portion as well. Right now, that's scheduled to be 5,500 square feet in a daycare of substantial size, allowing a lot of opportunity for childcare in the north side. With Cushing Terrell through the master planning process, we came up with this concept and design, really looking at how do we get appropriate density on that north portion where the townhomes and condos are, while not making it feel crammed. And it's always that's a fine balance and a process. We worked with the Scott Street Village neighborhood as well, to get on the alley and making sure that we're good neighbors in that process. And as far as the market rate goes, the central square, we were able to preserve through a shared parking agreement with the city that was in the LOI as well. Through this process, here's recent renderings from as this has gone further along. What we're looking at now is we're looking from the southeast portion off of Scott Street that runs north-south right here, and we're east-west along this sidewalk. This is the retail portion here in the middle, where the market hall is that will include food and beverage. And on the second floor, we have studio lofts that will bring more of an urban feel and dynamic to it. The market rate central square that was preserved through the shared parking agreement with the city is 1.5 acres of space that we're able to keep open and really create opportunities for both, not just the neighbors within this site, but also the entire neighborhood. If they want to come grab something from the market hall and walk over here and sit and enjoy the amazing weather we have. Along the back here on this portion is where the daycare facility will have their outdoor space. And so that's not accurately shown in here, but we're working through that. And so it'll really be an integrated outdoor space as well. That's been one of the key components to this process, is how do we integrate this instead of having these silos and really mixed use concept and urban feel. The community land trust portion, it requires subsidy, and the contributors to that has been the city of Missoula through the donation of land and providing a soft cost loan. MRA has funded the community engagement, the master planning process, infrastructure design, and what will eventually be the construction. Us as Rivara has provided the developer services. We're seeing that through the construction period and keys and doors where folks will reside in these homes. We've worked with NMCDC, who currently operates the land trust where Burn Street is. And really, how do we grow and scale this? This is of substantial size. It will nearly double the current number of units that they have under that land trust. And they will do the work of qualifying the buyers to make sure they meet the area median income requirements set by the city, as well as managing the CLT in perpetuity. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which you'll hear more about later, has engaged and recommended $500,000 loan funds. And we'll be circling back around that with that at a later date after we complete construction drawings and get finalized numbers. In terms of how it works, the buyer owns the structure on the land. They do not own the land. The North Missoula CDC will lease the ground to the buyer, which has restrictions in there that will prevent the homes from accelerating in cost, and which maintains the attainability in perpetuity. In terms of who can buy a home, it's folks who earn up to 120% of AMI. There's a number of agreements between the lease between the homeowner and North Missoula CDC. Because there's condos, there'll be a condo association as well as an HOA that goes with this, given the way the site's structured. And all of those are in the works. Sustainability is important to all of us. How do we do sustainability well? Part of that is density. Another part of that that's unique to this project, and I keep harping on this, is the shared parking concept of how do we utilize asphalt on the ground throughout the day, 24 hours a day, and not just dedicated to one single use. With the process as well, we looked at, how walkable and bikeable is it, and how do we reduce trips? The neighborhood grocery store is how we can do that. It keeps people from having to, go across the tracks to go get, a gallon of milk or bread or these other necessary items, as well as bringing, food and beverage options to the neighborhood. Mountain Line transit is through there, which allows for public transit, as well as, we're really looking at from an energy perspective of, while managing the cost to construct CLT homes, but also making sure that those are solar ready and EV ready, so that individuals moving into those homes don't have to open up drywall and increase, electrical panel sizes to support those. We take care of that up front. Looking at, appropriate air source heat pumps, and not just baseboard, not the most construction cost effective way to do this. What are the long-term right products to put in this development? Additionally, looking at envelope improvements in terms of windows and insulation and everything that goes with sealing that up and reducing the need for heating and cooling. And last but not least, durability. What are the products that we can put in once and use for an extended period of time, so they're not having to get replaced in 10, 15, 20 years, that they actually can stand the test of time and still hold up to the use. Anyone who's been awake in the last 2 years knows that uncertainties are a reality of the world we live in. We started this in an uncertain time, and we're continuing to develop this through an uncertain time. Some of the challenges that we're seeing and uncertainties is continued labor shortages. Every business owner will tell you that the reality is hiring is challenging, and we're all along for the ride in that. And how do we continue to address that? Additionally, global supply chains and material costs post-COVID continues to affect markets and rolls through different products. Early on it was the commodity side, and it's a downstream effect. We've all not been able to get things off of the shelves or had extended order times, and so we continue to try to manage for that. And additionally, interest rates, you've all seen it, we've all talked about it. They continue to rise, and managing for housing attainability as someone can purchase these homes as interest rates rise. And what are the things that we can do, as well as managing for the long term? The supply chain issues and labor shortages, combined with our construction season, means this could be pushed out. We could move from the fall to the spring start date pretty easily. It just depends on how things come out with that and managing the demand on general contractors and subcontractors as well. Making sure that we're getting appropriate pricing might cause a delay as well, because everyone is so constrained at this current time. The next things that we have to do to get this project done is we're currently in the engineering process for the right-of-way. We need to complete the architectural drawings and get construction bids for that, finalizing that, and as well as the construction loan. We're working with First Security Bank, looking at EQ2 funds to help support this project as well. And they would come in on both an EQ2 funds potentially, as well as the construction loan, but that's not finalized. So we'll make a TBD asterisk there. Going through the permitting process, and then we start the right-of-way construction and then site work for the community land trust homes and vertical construction once we have our fire in. When I started out this process, and us here at GoodWorks, we knew housing was important, but we didn't realize to what extent. We have become champions for what is the limited equity ownership model that North Missoula CDC and other community land trusts promote throughout Montana. And really it's a nationwide endeavor with Grounded Solutions leading that charge. It is important from our perspective long-term to continue to maintain these attainable housing. And this limited equity ownership model is something that's we've really fallen in love with and think it's important, as well as how do we continue to do this? We know the need is, while this project serves up to 120% AMI, we know the need is substantially higher than that in our community, in our neighborhood. And we want to find a place for all of the residents who want to stay here, give them opportunities for home ownership and solve that where we can. And so it's something that is crucial, and we continue to share that with everyone, given our learnings in this process. That's the end of my presentation, and open for questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? All right, seeing a couple. All right. Ms. Jones, I think you had your hand up first.
Thanks. I love this project, and I'm excited about this. I'm just excited about everything you're doing, and I can only begin to understand the difficulties in this time trying to implement this. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the solar ready, EV ready. I love that that's being incorporated into this project. Out of curiosity, how much does that add to the project? Or if when you build, it's just a no-brainer to put in? I'd just like to have more information on that, because it really so important in the future.
Yeah, so what that really means is taking it in a residential situation, going from a 100 amp panel to a 200 amp panel, and including conduit to the roof, so that we're not having to open walls and drill things. And so during construction, while it costs more, it's nominal. And if you do that post-construction, right, there's repair expenses there. It is substantially more expensive to do it, to make it solar EV ready post than it is during the construction process. And so it's one of the things that is a no-brainer thing to do. And as we've worked with Climate Smart Missoula, we continue to evaluate what are the appropriate things while meeting the budgetary constraints that we can do to drive sustainability in this project. Our hope is, and we would love to have solar panels on the top of every one of these, just to make it easy for people to move in. But given, while we're trying to meet those price points, and there's currently no residential PACE available in Montana. And so that's, commercial PACE exists, but residential PACE is not a thing yet. And so it just pushes the purchase price up another $20,000 estimated per unit, and it creates constraints on the budget. And so we're finding the appropriate trade-offs in this process.
Appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Ms. Savage.
Thanks so much, Kai. And this is just potentially in the dumb question category, but the shared parking concept, I wondered if you could just talk about that for just a sec, and kind of what it would look like in this situation.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is the type of use. And we're really looking between, there's day use, commercial use is really primarily what that looks like. And then residential use at night. And so the city through Title 20 and other mechanisms, ULI have looked at different ways for parking and managing for that. And we took out of Title 20, what's the shared parking, allowed to be. And then we're managing that based on use. There will be a contractual agreement between the city of Missoula and the market rate development that manages for maintenance and things like this. But it's really looking at use and time of day and managing for that and allowing that asphalt to be parked on longer periods of time instead of just during the ownership's use of that one period of time.
So if I could, basically what's happening is that the Public Works complex will be sharing parking with the multifamily development because they're there at different hours, which cuts down on the amount of parking we have to build.
Perfect, thanks. Mr. Hess.
Thanks. I was going to follow up on that. So I know that if you overlay the demand curves of residential parking and public works or other uses, they're going to, like you just said, Ellen, they're going to line up at different times. Has there been some modeling about that, about how much parking can be shared, or is that just defined through Title 20, or what's the process to right size that so that we're not overbuilding parking?
Yeah, so we've been working with WGM on that in terms of what is the parking demand and what does that look like. We've done traffic studies in terms of how many trips are we generating. Really at this point though, a lot of what we're managing for is making sure that we're meeting Title 20 code to permit the project. We haven't done an exercise to look at, is there opportunity to shrink parking count? It's our understanding that Title 20 will be looked at substantially and overhauled in the coming years, but we haven't done that work on this project specifically. Thanks.
Can I have a follow-up also?
Yes, sir.
So then I think another good practice here would be to the extent, I don't know what the mechanism will be, but to essentially not lease parking spaces with the unit and to unbundle those so that if there's a cost for leasing parking, it's separate from the cost of the unit. And I don't know if you have thoughts on that or if it's too early for that.
So the other way, so we have shared parking. We have parking in between the market hall and the market rate apartments. And then we're also inside of the market rate apartments, we're going to have what is essentially basement parking. Those will be premium parking spots that will be charged separately. And so there is a bit of unbundling through that process. If you want covered underground parking in the building, you can pay for that, or there's the shared parking available. There's the parking across the site available. It won't be dedicated spots in that sense.
Got it. Glad to hear that. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Hess. I do have a question on the condos. Who or what entity will be paying the lease to the NMCDC? Will that be the condo association, or will those occupants have two separate HOA type fees?
Our goal is to make this as clean as possible. So it's our expectation right now, while we don't have everything drafted, that the condo owner will pay to the condo association. The condo association will then pay the NMCDC. So those will be passed through. We know that we're going to have, shared water meters, and there'll be other things that the condo association is managing for. And so it just seems logical to roll that all up for one entity to take care of that and make it simple for the homeowners.
Great, thanks. Let's see.
In your role, is that your recommendation, I guess, while we're here?
I don't know that I know enough to have a strong recommendation, except that anytime I come across places that have two separate HOAs, it's really confusing. So if somebody was paying a fee to the NMCDC and an HOA, that could be complicated. But
yeah, and part of the soft cost was legal work for that, and so we do want to spend some time really thinking through and making this as clean, as simple as possible, so that it is not an arduous process for any of the homeowners.
Great. I don't see any other questions from council. However, I would ask if anybody of the public in attendance has any comments or questions to raise their hands. All right. I'm seeing none from there either. Kaya, is there anything else that you need to touch on with us?
The one thing that wasn't in my slide, was really, I want to commend the work of Ellen and the MRA over there. I can guarantee you we being Good Works Rivara wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for their work and engagement behind this process. That tool has substantially pushed us forward in our mind and kicked us off in a way that is crucial to its success. And on the back of that, really the entire team at the city has, everyone we've worked with has been behind this, and it's been a fantastic process to create what is hopefully a new housing model for Missoula through this restricted use and market rate combination. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to give us the update. And we look forward to kind of learning more as we go. All right. Moving on to the agenda. Mr. Adams, I believe you're up now talking about a letter of intent to sell to Mountain Line. And I believe Colin Woodrow is a panelist as well.
Excellent. I'm gonna share my screen, hopefully. Okay, my name is John Adams. I'm the Strategic Projects Administrator for the city. This winter, Mountain Line asked the city to sell to Mountain Line about 3.5 acres of city land within the Scott Street District so that they can apply for federal funding to construct a new operational headquarters on the city lot that they would purchase and a neighboring lot that they hope to acquire. So hopefully I'm going to be able to show you a couple maps here to locate you. The land in question is here between what will one day become Burn Street and Bulwer Street, north of Rogers Street. Mountain Line would like to acquire, here's another vision of it. What you can see here is private land in that red square, occupying about 2/3 of the red square, and then city land in the northern 1/3. You can see that again here. You're looking for the lot 7A. All of that hash marked land, lot 7, is city-owned land. All in all, it's about 21 acres. And so what Mountain Line is interested in doing is acquiring privately owned lot 11 on this map, and then about the southern 2/3 of lot 7A on this map. So I'm going to give you one more vision here. So this is the aerial view. The northernmost line of the red square is too high there. We wouldn't actually be selling them quite that much, but gives you a general sense of what's happening. And for background on that lot, the parcel that Mountain Line wants to purchase from us was once envisioned as a place for expansion of the city cemetery and has been used in the interim for material storage by the Department of Public Works and Mobility. And the recently completed cemetery master plan determined that this land was surplus to their needs. And the Public Works and Mobility master plan envisions vacating this property to consolidate operations on the White Pine Sash campus to the southeast. And doing that was intended and is intended to open up this land north of Rogers for redevelopment, primarily for housing. I'm going to just keep this slide up for a second. The city administration supports this request from Mountain Line. Mountain Line's a critical partner in achieving community goals ranging from climate change mitigation to affordable housing. So we're keenly interested in enabling them to apply for this federal funding. But we also want to make sure that Mountain Line's development would enhance city and north side neighborhood interests as well as help Mountain Line. But it's too early in Mountain Line's site planning, and we're too close to their deadline for application to the Federal Transit Authority for the city and Mountain Line to appropriately map out and agree on a complete purchase and sale agreement. But Mountain Line needs a commitment to be able to purchase the land in order to apply to the Federal Transit Authority. So you can see that there was a little catch-22. And what the Mountain Line and the administration propose is a letter of intent that commits the city to sell the land in question to Mountain Line, but which provides that in order for the sale to be completed, the two entities need to reach agreement on a number of issues that we believe are important to the neighborhood and to city priorities, like a shared parking agreement, that should permit better housing design on adjacent properties, and a Mountain Line commitment to review transit service in the North Reserve Scott Street District, see if more frequent service is merited. We think we successfully worked with Mountain Line to create a plan that helps support the expansion of transit in the community while also mitigating the opportunity cost of selling this land that could otherwise be targeted for housing. So I'm going to spell out the parameters of the letter of intent in a minute, but first I want to introduce Colin Woodrow, Mountain Line's projects and planning manager, who's going to share a little bit about Mountain Line's space needs and why this property presents a pretty unique opportunity to meet those needs. Colin?
Thank you, John, and thank you, Council, for having us today. I am going to try and share my screen real quick. I apologize. Oh, where's this? Am I okay? I'm not sharing it. All right. For some reason, I can't get it into this other mode. I apologize. I'm used to Teams.
We've got it now. Yep.
Okay. You'll see this on the side, so you'll know how many slides I'm going through. All right. Well, thank you again. Yeah, as John explained, we've been seeking a new location for our base of operations, our maintenance, and administration for quite some time. Mountain Line is growing, and we are expanding service. I'm on my fault. Here we go. All right. We are expanding service to the community, 7 days service, and we're staffing up to deliver that service. To continue to best serve Missoula and operate efficiently and continue to meet our goals, we simply need more space. Currently, we're situated on the west side on 2.2 acres, and our space needs analysis shows that we need 8 to 10 acres to meet current and future programming needs. We cannot continue to electrify our fleet without a new facility. We're simply out of space. We've been, I know some council members we were fortunate enough to have you visit and tour our site. And I think on one of those tours, you saw that we were working with some engineers trying to find places to site more infrastructure. We are truly out of space. If you, when you're on those tours, I think you probably already also noticed that we have a shortage from our maintenance bays to office space, and that every night it's a game of Tetris to figure out how to park all of our vehicles, with the majority of them parked outside in the elements, which does create an operational cost for us. Our strategic plan goals include expanded service, continuing to push towards 100% electrification by 2035. And ultimately, we'd love to see the long-range transportation plan mode split goals met, and a potential for bus rapid transit on Brooks and serving this community. We can't advance on those goals simply because we're limited on space, and we're in dire need for a new facility. The FTA has an annual cycle for a bus and bus facilities grant. And this grant allows us to leverage local funds and help realize our new facility. For every dollar we put in, 4 federal dollars are brought to our community if awarded. Our application is due at the end of this month, and awards, if announced, when announced in August, hopefully will include Mountain Line. We're well on our way to apply and have received significant support and encouragement from the FTA. And in order to make this application as compelling and competitive as possible, having site control, or the capacity for site control, is critical. And so we really do hope to arrive at this LOI. For reference, Mountain Line's been on we've been scouring Missoula, and the valley, as you know, is limited in supply of contiguous 8 to 10 acres of land. It's just difficult to find property. And when this site came available, pulling two parcels together, this quickly rose to the top of our list, given all of our site criteria. A key component of that site criteria is being located in the city core. Simply put, for every mile or every hour that we have to drive where the buses are empty, those are costs, and that's service that's not being placed on the road. And that's we really want to make sure that we're able to reduce those what we call deadhead costs and ensure that we are staying local. Mountain Line sees this continued push towards our strategic goals, a strategic plan, and the city goals as helping to realize, from electrification, air quality, reduced pollution, reducing the cost of living for Missoulians, and really being a strong employer in the community and rooting some strong jobs in the neighborhood. We really see these as strong benefits for the community. So we hope to win this award, not only for Mountain Line's operation, but to serve and to best serve Missoulians. So with that, just really want to humbly thank you for your support as we seek this support for this LOI and this application. I'll turn it back to you, John.
So the conditions of the letter of intent are basically that Mountain Line will sell to Mountain Line 3.6 acres of land at fair market value. Mountain Line needs to obtain Federal Transit Authority funding by 2024. This gives them 3 application cycles through the FTA. They need to acquire the adjacent property. And then the city and the Mountain Line need to complete a purchase agreement that includes stipulations that are included in the letter of intent. So again, because we are on an accelerated timeline, couldn't solve everything at the outset of this process, and instead agreed to solve more problems, or I shouldn't say problems, solve more issues or create more agreements and cooperation subsequently in the purchase agreement. And so the additional items that are identified in Exhibit B of the letter of intent include a bunch of things, but the most important in my view are that Mountain Line will lead a public process on design to engage the neighborhood and mitigate any impacts of the facility. That the facility will provide for shared parking so that future residential development on neighboring land will have greater design flexibility, and we reduce the amount of surface parking needed in the neighborhood, similar to what Rivara is accomplishing just a little bit east. That the remaining city property will have dimensions that would facilitate residential redevelopment in the future. That when the facility is completed, Mountain Line will review transit service in the North Reserve Scott Street area to determine whether increased bus service in the area is warranted. And that Mountain Line will dedicate the rights of way for Burns Street and Bulwer Street. So on that last point, since the North Reserve Scott Street master plan was completed in 2016, we've seen some pretty substantial changes in the area. We've completed city master planning for the cemetery and for public works and mobility in a way that has let us envision some new opportunities in the district. And the Mountain Line project would be consistent with the directions that we've been moving, in particular because it would resolve one of the trickier parts of completing Burns Street. I'm going to try to show you how completing Burns Street would do 2 important things. First, it would create the infrastructure to allow us to essentially open an entire additional east-west block between Roger Street and I-90 to redevelopment. So the gains, presumably in focused inward housing, could be really substantial. You're looking here in this first slide at what we collectively planned and council adopted as a master plan in 2016. And then when you look at what city staff started to consider as an update in 2021, you can see an entire new additional block between Roger Street and I-90. Here they are side by side, so you can see that new strip of yellow running northwest to southeast. Second thing it would do is create the possibility of completing what we call the Turner Street connection via Burns Street instead of Turner Street, instead of Bulwer Street. So the city is planning to divert heavy truck traffic and bus traffic and potentially someday I-90 interchange traffic out of the heart of the Scott Street residential neighborhood and instead along Burns Street and out to Scott Street via Turner Street. So one of the trickiest parts of all that is that the Burns Street right-of-way right where, if you'll remember lot 11 from earlier, right where private landowners are currently private landowners are using what should someday become Burn Street. And so it's a little bit of a complicated right-of-way situation. And this is an opportunity to let Mountain Line resolve that, when otherwise dedicating that right-of-way might take years, or it might actually never happen. So we hope to complete this piece and then continue the work we've already started to acquire all of the right-of-way we need to complete this connection, where you could get all the way from Scott Street to the proposed I-90 interchange to Coal Mine Road via Turner Street and Burn Street. So, in summary, the administration believes that the approval of the letter of intent to sell this land to Mountain Line will bring in fair value revenue to support other city priorities, advances the community interests that can only be achieved if Mountain Line has a high functioning, right-sized facility, helps obtain the federal funding, without which that simply won't happen, helps Mountain Line spend money on better service rather than empty trips, helps complete an important part of infrastructure in the Scott Street district, sets the stage for residential redevelopment on neighboring property in the future, and ensures continued neighborhood engagement with a community-minded partner during redevelopment. So we ask Council's approval of the letter of intent to sell this land to Mountain Line. Colin and I are available for questions, and Jeremy Keene with Public Works and Ellen Buchanan with the Missoula Redevelopment Agency are also available, since their departments will necessarily be closely involved in the project. Thank you.
All right. I do have a question to kind of lead off, and this might be best for Colin. What would be the plan for the land that the Mountain Line currently owns or is located on the other side of the railroad tracks?
Yeah, thank you. It's 2.2 acres, and the intention is to relocate all of Mountain Line to one base. So we would dispossess of this site. Whether that, we would love to see, it's obviously situated in a neighborhood and could potentially become residential. Definitely see that as a strong potential. But yeah, we will be selling the site in order to help make that transition.
All right, great. Looks like Ms. Savage, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you. I have several questions and I think I'd start with Colin, if that's okay. Mr. Stand-in Chair.
Absolutely.
Okay, Colin, I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how many electric buses you all currently have and how many you would hope to gain by applying for this grant.
Yeah, thanks. Currently, we are about 43%. We're 43% battery electric. Really, battery electric buses help us reach that 100% zero tailpipe emission goal. Right now, we have been awarded for 4 more battery electric buses that we were awarded in FY21, and we will purchase those 4 more, which will get us a little over 50% of our fleet will become battery electric. After that, we're just not able to add more buses into the system. We have 13 more buses that we'll need to replace, and 10 of those we aim to replace in the next 5 years, ideally in the next 3. But it's a competitive market. Yeah.
Great. And a follow-up.
Go ahead.
And in terms of having sort of, I guess maybe increased electricity demands, do you see any issues with this site being able to meet those electricity demands for the electric buses?
No, we've been partnering with Northwestern Energy, who on our rate case and working with Northwestern Energy for a while. We're also part of an application we're working on right now. Is we envision battery electric storage, so we can help reduce demand and even out our flow. So yeah, we anticipate that it'll be a positive move. And in regards to energy, I didn't mention it, but there will be no underground fuel tanks. This site would be 100% electric. And again, by the time this is built, we'll just be transitioning our cutaways, our paratransit vehicles as those become available to meet that demand.
One more follow-up and then I'll go to the back of the line because the rest of my questions are for city staff. Colin, do you imagine that there will be any idling of diesel buses at this new location? Just thinking of sort of an environmental equity situation for residents on the north side.
Yeah, as we do this transition to our right now, we still have diesel buses. As we make that transition, we will be we'll be 100% electric by 2035, and hopefully much sooner. We anticipate in the next 5 years that we'll only have 3 diesel buses and limited use on those buses. Otherwise, all of our supervisor vehicles are gas or hybrid at this point. If there will be any idling, it'll be for a short period. And the other design element that should be noted is that our facility is to be contained. So we can, buses would be inside of a bus barn to reduce any noise and deal with any pollutants.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Vasika.
Thanks. First of all, I wanted to say I went on a tour, I think it was last week, of the facility, and yes, you definitely need some expansion. That's for sure. And I wanted to thank you all for that tour. My main question is, I guess I'm a little confused. So we're using taxpayer dollars we're selling taxpayer land to the Mountain Line, which uses taxpayer dollars to operate. So I guess I'm a little bit confused about the whole finances of this. I guess what fund is this going to go into for the city, and then what fund is this going to go into for the Mountain Line?
Yeah, reasonable question. And so on the city side, city ordinance dictates that when land is sold, that money goes to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that's what would happen right now. I think that Dale and other staff have had conversations with some council members and started to talk about the idea of funneling some of that money to the cemetery, because cemetery has long had a claim on that land. And so to kind of enable them to implement their master plan in a way that they envisioned when they revised it, there may be an appropriate split between the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the cemetery, but that'll be up to council to decide later.
Okay, I guess I'm just a little bit confused because isn't the Mountain Line funded by taxpayer dollars? So can we just do like a swap, or is this the proper way to do it? I guess I'm just confused of why we're selling it instead of just transferring it.
Because we're funded by different subsets of taxpayers, and because we receive different funding from different entities, we just have different options and different budgets. It just doesn't. It's sort of like if the county needed some city land, we're just different entities, and so even though we work together and we represent many of the same people, we still have to keep those finances separate. And so a sale is the appropriate way to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Cheryl.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down. My question got answered.
No worries. Ms. Becerra.
Thank you. Similar to what Sandra was bringing up, when I toured the Mountain Line facilities, I've done that several times, but at the last one of the questions that I had was, I understand we can't swap properties, but is there, I'm really excited about the possibility of Mountain Line selling the current location, that land, and integrating it better within our goals to land bank for affordable housing purposes. And so while I understand that we can't just swap land or properties, is there any way that we can have enter into some sort of agreement that we can have first bits, if you will, or, some sort of ability for the city to consider that in the future? So I guess that's one of my questions or comments. And another one that I have is, maybe I'm not visualizing this right, but I'm wondering about Public Works wanting to have all their facilities in one place and relocating to one one area and how that's going to be affected by this, if at all?
Jeremy, would you like to speak to Public Works? If Jeremy,
John, I didn't see that Jeremy was on.
okay.
He's on, I'm promoting him right now.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry, I was sitting in the outside listening. So to answer Ms. Becerra's question, we are transitioning out of that space currently. So we've been reducing our operations in that parcel north of Rogers, and eventually plan to move to the White Pine Sash site when it's available. The current limitation is that they are still doing some of the cleanup on that site with a land treatment unit, and we expect that to be going for another couple of years. So we may have to do a little bit of shuffling if Mountain Line is successful with their grant, but mostly what we have there is non-permanent operations. So we're stockpiling materials. We have some drying ponds and some other screening activities that are going on, but not terribly difficult to move. We're working on the timing of that in those agreements, and asked Mountain Line to give us as much advance notice as possible so we can get our operations out of there. Was there another part to your question?
No, that was the one regarding Public Works. Thank you. My other one is just a comment about being able to land bank, if possible, that property. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Savage, it looks like you're back up in the queue.
I'm back. I had some questions about, and this would be for city staff, about infrastructure. I think that we are asking a lot of Scott Street, and we are asking a lot of that particular part of town. And I guess I'm just curious, it seems to me that if Mountain Line were to relocate over into this parcel and all of the things fall into place with funding and having a willing seller and those sorts of things, it does bring up a really good opportunity for us to talk about some of the deep infrastructure needs that part of town, it seems to me, would require to be able to do this. And so I guess my question is, what is the timing of things like a traffic plan or building out roads or building out, interstate exchanges, those kind of real deep sort of infrastructure pieces? How does that work with some of the timing of moving, this many buses across Scott Street, and then having all of those buses have to go back across Scott Street every day? How will they get out of the north side? I just have a lot of questions about what this looks like in terms of timeline and plan.
So I can try to make a run at that.
Yeah. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, so I think we've done a lot of good planning, and we've planned for the infrastructure that's going to be needed as this area develops. The timing on it is really going to be a little bit driven by how quickly it develops and how quickly we can put funding together for those projects. So I think that we want to look at each opportunity to build another piece. And so we're doing that with the Scott Street Rivara project, and this Mountain Line project would also help implement a piece of that infrastructure that's going to be needed to eventually, make those other connections. What we learned from the Scott Street Rivara traffic analysis is that there's kind of a breaking point for Scott Street as the primary access in and out of that area. So it can handle a certain amount of development before we're going to have other options. And most immediately that Rivara project can happen without additional transportation connections, but in the not too distant future after that, we're going to have some other pieces in place. So I kind of look at this as like a 5 to 10 year timeline to get some of those pieces put in place. And remember that development's not going to happen all at once either. So a project like this one with Mountain Line, what we're really talking about is 2 to 3 years before that facility would be up and running. And that's the same for other major development projects that might happen nearby. So we do have a little bit of time. We are also working, we received some technical assistance grant money from EPA to help look at transportation connections to this area because it's a brownfields area. And so we're taking the next steps to develop preliminary engineering and costs feasibility around getting some of those other pieces in place. And, big ones being a new interchange at I-90. We need to really get that plan solidified, make sure that it's feasible to add that new interchange. And then securing right-of-ways, that's going to be another really important step. And this project, we negotiated into the agreement the right-of-ways we would need for those streets. We also will continue to work on the other pieces of those streets, namely the Turner extension that would bring that collector street through and up to the north to connect with I-90.
The other thing that's been driven by the Mountain Line project is one of the things we're trying to do with this is we're trying to divert all that truck traffic and the large vehicle traffic away from where the residential is developing. Right now it uses Rogers, and that's right through the middle of the residential area. So with the Mountain Line project, we've got the ability now to begin to extend Burns, which then begs the question of we need to go ahead and do Turner so that all that bus traffic is going south and either east or west. And some of that traffic is going to go to the west and hit the Reserve Street area. Not everything will use Scott Street. And once we get the Turner connection done, then we totally are able to avoid the residential areas and biggest impact on the north side because all that traffic will be south.
All right, thank you. Thank you both. Ms. Jones.
Thanks. Just first of all, Mike, did you need a motion? Was that already done?
I don't believe we've got one, no.
Okay, I am happy to make the recommended motion, and I just had a few thoughts, not so much questions, but I appreciated the specific questions from people. And it's this funny chicken or egg, like you've got to get the plan created so that you can apply for these monies, but a lot of the details will get worked out along the way, but you make create as much of a foundation as possible. So great questions to try and figure out what the future will look like for this neighborhood. But I also just wanted to say how significant this is. It's such a great location and it's a great project, but to take a step back and look big picture at the fact that we're having the discussion about the fact that our mass transit in Missoula needs a bigger location is great. And I'm really excited about that. We know our population is going to grow because we live in such a beautiful valley and Missoula is wonderful, but I just wanted to kind of give a nod to Mountain Line and all of the work that they've done, and Zero Fare, that entire endeavor has had huge impacts, and the progress I've seen on electric buses in the last few handful of years is just astounding. And now they need to expand and increase the bus line. So I just wanted to take a step back and acknowledge that not a lot of communities are necessarily having these conversations that they need to expand their bus system portal because they just aren't in that situation. And I'm really grateful that we are. I think this is really good on so many levels. So I just wanted to shout that out.
Thanks so much, President Jones. I agree with that. That's great. And the chicken and the egg thing is something I feel like we're just having on council on a lot of projects right now, but kind of goes with the territory of growth. Mr. Carlino.
Yeah, I just saw that. I'm happy to support this too. I just saw that it was the new site would accommodate Mountain Line until 2060, you predict. And I was just curious, like, if how you came up with that year, and just if the plan would just be to move to another bigger facility after that, or.
Yeah, good question. Our space needs analysis we project based on what we imagine Missoula's growth to be, and what that service map and service routes would look like, both in fixed route and paratransit. Certainly, transportation is evolving quickly. Battery electric buses were quite a novelty in 2017, 2019, and it's the de facto push now for mass transit. We don't know what transit will look like in 2060. We hope it's bus rapid transit or maybe multiple lines of that. And so we are projecting out with significant population growth. And so that's what that model is based on. We do hope that we have the ability to scale up on a site. Yeah, I hope that answered that question.
All right, Ms. Vasika.
Thank you. I just want to let the public know that when I was on my tour, it was a misconception from me, honestly, that the taxpayers were paying for the free Wi-Fi on board, but they are not. It's provided by a private entity as a sponsorship. Is that correct?
Admittedly, I don't know the details of our Wi-Fi sponsorship, but we do have a partnership for Wi-Fi service. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to let them put that on the public record.
Okay. I can follow up if you'd like.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hess.
Thanks. I'm really excited to support this for a lot of the reasons that President Jones mentioned. This is really the underpinning of transit expansion for the next 40 years, and beyond. Really, I mean, this is we have such visionary transit plans and transportation plans, and without space to store buses, to maintain buses, there's no expansion. And we've seen with the recent Mountain Line mill levy how popular Mountain Line is in our community. So I think this partnership is a no-brainer, and I'm really pleased to support it. It also helps advance our housing goals, and I think helps develop. I mean, this will catalyze development on Burn Street and Bulwer Street in the north side, which will ultimately help. It'll help with traffic. I mean, kind of there are congestion concerns. I don't think congestion is the right word. There's 20 minutes in the afternoon where Phillips and Scott is inconvenient, but I think that what this does is it builds connections, and building those connections creates opportunity for alternate routes, and it creates opportunity to just create a grid network, and that's what a good neighborhood requires. I also am really excited that this will potentially give the north side the opportunity to have high frequency service like the west side does through those future that future evaluation of transit routes. So I think it's win-win. It keeps transit service close to downtown, or it keeps transit buses close to downtown. And I think just from the standpoint of a fiscally constrained operation, and really taking as fiscally conservative of an approach at siting the facility as possible, it might cost a little bit more to develop close to the city center, but the operating costs of accessing, the operating cost of driving an empty bus from a facility by the Y or by the airport to the Mountain Line Transfer Center is a perpetual cost versus versus a one-time cost of building closer to the city center. And then having a lower operating cost in perpetuity. So it really saves taxpayers money in the long run to build this facility as close to downtown as possible. And so I'm really supportive of that. Lastly, I want to just disclose that in my role at the University of Montana, I've been participating in these discussions. There's no conflict of interest, but I just wanted that in the record that I have been working on this alongside Mountain Line.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hess. Ms. Becerra and then Ms. Vasika, and then we do have 3 more items on the agenda. So after that, I'll go to public comment so we can.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to voice my support for this. Transportation costs are a huge component of housing affordability, And if we can help increase the services that we're able to provide via transit, I see that as helping the housing issue as well. And in terms of land use and development, transit-oriented development has proven again and again to be an effective tool for planning with purpose. And I also want to point out that, Mountain Line is one of those services that has a huge impact and a huge reach in the community, and yet it's in a very small footprint if you think about it. So, I can imagine Mountain Line doing so much more with a little bit more space, and I'm happy to support that. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to all the staff and agencies that have been collaborating to make this happen and putting their heads together to come up with creative solutions. So I'll be fully supportive of this.
Thank you. And Ms. Vasika.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief. I know that it's really known that I do not really support the whole zero fare thing with the bus, but I do have to give a huge applause to the Mountain Line structure, because they were doing what this I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the scavenger hunt thing, and to increase ridership and to make it fun to ride the bus. And so I said, what the heck, might as well try that out. I'll bring my baby on board and figure it out. And I had a lot of questions like, how do I get a stroller on board? Like, what if I have a bike? What happens if I get stranded and there's an emergency? Turns out my Mountain Line has figured out all of those things, and it's really easy, and everyone has been very nice. And it actually opened up my mind a lot on it. And we actually went to the library and had a lot of fun. We went to Karis Park. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody at Mountain Line. I've opened my eyes to it. I'm still not 100% on board with the zero fare, but I'm really impressed with the whole operation that Mountain Line has done. Oh, and I also wanted to say that I just learned that UDash also is open to the public as well. So that's not really known to a lot of the public. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think the opportunity for UDash to kind of partner a little bit with the Mountain Line in this new facility, or with potential for partnership down the road, is a great side benefit. Any public comment? I see we do have attendees in the audience. All right. Seeing no hands, we do have a motion on the floor. So I would ask for Rhea for a roll call vote.
Okay. All right, we're going to do the roll call vote. Anderson?
Yes.
Becerra?
Yes.
Carlino?
Yes.
Hess?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Nugent?
Yes.
Savage?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
And Vasika?
Yes.
10 yes, vote is unanimous.
All right, thank you so much. Next, we will call on Ellen Buchanan to talk about the Scott Street Redevelopment Project Infrastructure Reimbursement Resolution. Ms. Buchanan.
So I'm not going to share my screen because any graphic I could put up here, you've just seen in the last hour and a half. So, what this is it's a pretty standard procedure that we use when we know we're going to issue bonds and we've got front end costs for design and that sort of thing, particularly with infrastructure projects. We ask council to approve a reimbursement resolution, which allows us, when we do sell bonds, to pay for the construction of the infrastructure with this project. We can reimburse the urban renewal district for that cost and then invest that money in other projects. Once again, it's a pretty standard piece of business. And this just allows us to meet the IRS conditions around what bond proceeds can be used for. We know we do not have the cash or the cash flow in that district to build the infrastructure that's being associated with the Rivara project. And if Mountain Line is successful in their endeavors to gain FTA funding, then there may well be some other infrastructure costs associated with that project that would be done with TIF funds. So this just once again allows us to roll those design fees into the bond issue at the time that they're issued.
Thank you. Any questions from council? All right. Seeing none, any, oh, Mr. Hess.
I'm sorry, I was just going to make the recommended motion if you needed that.
Thanks. All right, we do have the motion. Any public comment from any attendees in the audience? All right, seeing none, no council comment. We'll go for a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Masika.
Yes.
10 ayes and 0 noes. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have item 3.4, which is referral on the funding recommendations for the 2022 unified applications to set a public hearing. So who am I throwing to? Kendra, Karen, Emily, Aubrey.
That would be me.
All right, Aubrey, you are up.
Awesome. I will just share my screen here. Great. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us today to go over our funding recommendations for the unified application process. First, I just want to quickly introduce everyone here on the team. First is Emily Harris-Shears. She's a housing policy specialist. I'm Aubrey Godby. I'm the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Coordinator. We have Karen Gazvoda, who is a grants specialist or grants administrator, and Kendra Lyson, who's also a grants administrator. So the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Program funds are made available to the city of Missoula on an annual basis based on federal government through U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, home and CBDG money, and allocations differ from year to year, but on average, we get about 800,000 and between 200,000. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the city has allocated approximately $1 million in funding for this program cycle specifically, and collectively we call these funds the Community Development Funds. So here's a graphic of our timeline. We had pre-applications due in January, final applications due in February, applications were scored in March, April chosen applicants were notified, and we are currently in the funding recommendations before council. After that, upon council approval, contracts will be signed and funds will be spent. So our funds must benefit households of specific incomes. Income limits are often referred to in our area as area median income. So this slide just kind of goes into breaking it down a little bit. If you line up every household in our region from the one making the least to the one making the most, the household in the middle would be the median household. Therefore, the median area income is the household income for the middle household in a region. Community development funds use area median income specifically to determine eligibility for assistance. HUD requires that CBDG and home dollars are spent on those making 80% or less AMI, while the trust fund dollars, some can go up to 120% AMI. For Missoula, the AMI for a family of 4 is approximately $70,000, which means that our HUD funds can help families making less than 56K, while our trust fund dollars can help families making less than 86K. If you compare this to the annual income a person would have to make in order to afford a median priced home, that would be 96K. So here's a brief overview of the funds. The trust fund's purpose is to better provide housing at a wide range of entry points and to ensure that all Missoulians can obtain safe and decent homes. Our funds can be used for a variety of different housing related activities, including new construction, preservation, and consumer housing services. Home funds can be used to fund a wide range of activities as well, including building, buying, and/or rehabilitating affordable housing for rent or home ownership, or providing direct rental assistance to people with low incomes. And then CDBG is a more flexible program than home, and it supports community development activities to build stronger and more resilient communities. Activities may address needs such as housing rehabilitation, acquisition of real property, homeowner assistance, demolition, infrastructure and public facility improvements, economic development, and social services. So I will hand the next slides off to Emily Harris-Shears.
Hi, nice to see you. I'm Emily Harris-Shears. So just want to give some background in the requests that we received. So we received us overprescribed by $300,000 for home. They were received $850,000 of requests and were oversubscribed by $250,000. And then the community development block grant, they had $1 million available and received $924,000 in requests. And so there was a balance there of $113,000. Can you advance for me? Thank you. So in our unified process, we used a consistent scoring rubric for all applicants. And the scoring, we also had a scoring committee, which was comprised of 2 council members, Councilmember Becerra and Councilmember Jordan, and then 6 community planning, development, and innovation staff. And we each reviewed the applications individually and scored them, and then met together for a review and discussion session. And the criteria that we used is project design, demonstrated knowledge of community need and the need that this proposed project is meeting, impacts and outcomes for the project, the financial feasibility, and then also the timeliness or readiness to get started. Then we had some staff scoring and bonus sections. The staff scoring, that's the 4 of us, Kendra, Karen, Aubrey, and me. And we scored the committed match, the completeness of the application. And then in the bonus categories, we scored just once. It was an all or nothing opportunity for applicants around the prevention of displacement, the innovation of the project, and the funding request type. And that was only for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in a process of trying to incent loans and to get money to return to the fund over time. So we received 11 applications in total, and we are recommending, the scoring committee is recommending 8 applications for funding, 4 projects from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund at $1,046,200. The home project of 3 projects at $854,821, and the community development block grant, 1 project at $324,000. So for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the scoring committee recommended advancing the North Missoula Community Development Corporation's Wolf Street project for a request of $340,000. That will be for the purchase of land under 2 apartment buildings and an adjacent house to convert the land to a community land trust, and then work with the tenants to identify the best shared model, and we'll either convert to a community land trust, a condo, or a housing co-op, depending on the needs and desires of the tenants. You've already seen the Habitat for Humanity acquisition of modular homes project, which was approved in April. And we are also recommending the Homeward Homeownership Centers programs, which will provide financial and housing education and counseling programs to Missoulians who have housing and financial goals. And that is a project that is not restricted to an area median income. So any resident in Missoula could participate in that program. And then the scoring committee did recommend the Rivara development, the Scott Street CLT project, for $500,000 loan. And the project, as you heard from Kai, is still in its evolution phase. And the application that we reviewed was to contribute to the funding for 78 affordable community land trust homes. While they're continuing to do their construction design and all of the pieces that will answer the feasibility and the affordability of the actual construction of the project, we've decided to hold off on moving that loan forward until we know how many community land trust homes will be included in that project. And we also will have the scoring committee review the updated information from Rivara and then endorse that project, because it has changed pretty significantly from the time that we reviewed that application. But it's still our intent and hope to recommend that at a later date. And now I'll pass it off to Karen.
Thanks, Emily. So HUD is yet to release the allocations for the federal Cdbg and home dollars for our program year 2022. But as you can see here, the annual allocations haven't changed all that much in the last 11 years. This allows us to more readily estimate the annual allocations, but on the flip side, the amounts we receive aren't adjusted for inflation. So we have to do more with less. If our allocations come in more or less than what we anticipate, the Cdbg and home project funding amounts will be increased or decreased according to the scores received in the scoring committee. And more details can be found on the memo that's attached here to your items. You'll most likely recognize these two projects. They have been recommended for this year's home funds. The Trinity and Bellagio projects have been funded with home dollars in the past, and they've returned to ask for additional funding. The home program also allows for the designation of what we called a community housing development organization. CHODO is a nonprofit organization whose main purpose is to help build capacity to build affordable housing for the community it serves. CHODOs can ask for and receive up to 5% of our home funds to cover operating expenses. This year, Homeward, a Missoula CHODO since 2003, has asked for $19,000. The North Missoula Community Development Corporation's Burlington project has been recommended to receive Cdbg funds. The project will help fund the cost of a purchase of a single-family residence and 2 adjacent lots. The properties will be converted to a community land trust, ensuring permanent affordability. In addition to these projects, Home and Cdbg allows for a small percentage of the award to be spent on administration and planning. These amounts will be increased or decreased within the regulations once HUD awards us our allocation. These projects will have lasting positive outcomes for our community with supports for more than 400 permanently affordable units and well over 2,000 individuals, if you estimate those who will move into those units. And that's including those who will be helped immediately through the financial and homeownership education program and the immediate assistance available to the 11 individuals benefiting from our housing projects. And before we get to the motion, we'd like to encourage you to reach out with comments on any or all of these projects. You can do that on Engage Missoula or by calling or emailing us. While you're at it, you can check out the HUD required annual action plan, also available on Engage Missoula. And the report goes into more details on the CDBG and home projects, which will be submitted to HUD prior to the start of our program year, and comments will be accepted through June 6th. Our recommended motion is to set a public hearing, direct staff to negotiate contracts, and authorize the mayor to sign them. With that, we're ready for any questions that you have.
All right, I want to go ahead and take down your screen share. Any questions from the council? All right, seeing that, any public comment? Krista, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone on behalf of Homeward for the funding recommendations, and thank you to the city staff and the Office of Community Planning, Development, and Innovation, and to this Housing Redevelopment and Community Programs Committee for hopefully setting that public hearing. It's no surprise to anyone in this little Zoom room that homes that Missoulians can afford is a critical need right now. The organizations that these funds will support are working to partner together and with the city to solve those challenges that our friends and neighbors are facing, whether that's making the most of their limited finances through financial skill building, finding rental homes they can afford, or preparing for homeownership through homebuyer education and creative homeownership opportunities. So we thank you in advance for hopefully taking this next step and for all the effort you make every day towards solving this problem.
Thank you so much. Heather.
Yes, I'd like to echo the thanks on behalf of Homeward for the recommendations. We work closely with staff on our request for Trinity. This was a request that we planned on submitting for Affordable Housing Trust funds. We wanted to help outline policy and get assistance with some impact fees associated with the project. So it was planned from the beginning, but then we worked closely with staff, knowing that we could absorb home funds and make it easier for some of the other projects to use the housing trust funds. So I think it's a successful use of funds across the board as far as all the creative projects and the difficult projects the city has supported over the last 2 years for funding here in Missoula. It's much needed and we greatly appreciate it.
Great. I see no other public comments. So I'll go back to council and Ms. Becerra.
I don't know if this is the right time, but I'd be happy to make the motion if needed, or maybe that falls under.
No, please do.
I'm not sure. But regardless, I would just like to mention that I served on this committee and it was truly a privilege to serve on that committee, reviewing so many amazing projects. And I just feel that we are incredibly lucky to have so many organizations that are doing remarkable work to improve our community. And also I want to commend our staff for their diligent review of all the applications. So I'm fully supportive of it and would like to see all these, I would like to see many more applications funded. That's always the tough decision to be made, but all worthy of financial and funding assistance.
Great. President Jones.
Yeah, I just also wanted to speak, first of all, in favor of this. These are great projects. We're seeing some multi-year applications come through, but we've got some really big projects and frankly, rapidly changing circumstances on the ground that are changing the equations every day for the cost on all of these. So I think it totally makes sense. And these big projects are they're going to have good impact in the long run. I also just wanted to thank the applicants. First of all, I know how much work these applications are. I've been on the committee before and read them. So, okay, thanks for engaging and doing the hard work to get these applications over the finish line. Thank you to staff for all of the work on your end, evaluating them and analysis. And thank you for well, thank you finally to the counselors who served on this committee, Merta and Kristen. I know how much time it takes, and it's just a big commitment. So thanks for doing all of this. I'm glad to see these come through, and I'm happy to vote yes.
Great. Seeing no other counselors with comments, I'll circle back to the public, and Bob Oakes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to join and thank the review committee. We have 2 projects that are going to be funded, and it's really exciting, and we really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no other public and no other comments from council. We do have a motion, so take a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
Basika, I'm sorry, Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl, Cheryl,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Now.
That was really weird. It said I was unmuted. Yes is my answer.
Thank you. Vasika.
Yes.
Right. 10 yes, no, 0 no, motion is approved.
All right, thank you all, and thank you so much, applicants, for being here to participate. We appreciate it. All right, our last item on the agenda for today, item 3.5, substantial amendment to the CDBG and Home Program Year 2021 Action Plan. And Kendra and Karen, it looks like we're throwing back to you two.
Yeah, thank you. So Aubrey's going to share her screen. Let's just start with the third slide, Aubrey. So now we need to talk about 2 more things, amendment to our Program Year 21 Action Plan and to Home ARP Allocation Plan. And we'll start with a substantial amendment. As you know, each year in the spring, we bring you CDBG and Home Annual Action Plan that details the projects recommended for the funding for that year. And last year we presented on 6 projects. Today we're here to present an amendment to last year's action plan. In the program year 2021, Homeward applied for and was approved a $500,000 CDBG grant to help support the Navigation Center, which is a part of the larger Trinity Apartment project. The Navigation Center will be located at the Mullen site to provide access to supportive services that will work with the programs already in place to help divert people from unnecessary hospitalizations or incarceration and help combat chronic homelessness for the people that experience those challenges. Before any contract was signed, however, Homeward notified us that they were able to secure additional funding from other source and therefore no longer needed our home CDBG or our city CDBG funds. The influx of federal dollars into our community through funding such as the American Rescue Plan has created this unique situation. It's unlikely, though, that this will happen again. So just to reiterate, no contract was signed and no funds were given. Our policy does, however, require it that we bring before you and open a public hearing whenever there's a significant change in funding or projects. So for the substantial amendment, the Navigation Center project will be removed from the 2021 action plan and all funds will be reallocated to future projects. So do any of you have any questions on this before we move on to the Home ARP funds?
Mr. Hess, go ahead.
Thanks. So I just, I guess I want to commend, it's more of a comment, but it sounds like $500,000 fell off a truck that Homeward found from another source, and so kudos for that. And I guess I was curious if you could tell us what that source was.
It was the American Rescue Plan funds, at least in part.
Heather, if you want to add to that, you can.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to say thank you. I appreciate that nod. We have almost every letter of the alphabet soup in this project as far as different funding sources, but the state was really good about recognizing that all the housing projects around the state had been greatly impacted over the last 2 years. And so when the federal ARPA funds were received by the state legislature carved out a chunk of those funds for housing, $15 million. And then it was distributed to all the projects that hadn't finished their projects yet and had seen impacts either in the early planning stages or through construction. And Trinity was one of them that saw pretty significant cost increases, and we navigated it fairly well, but we were awarded $2 million. We had over $2 million of impacts of cost, but we were able to navigate through there and thought instead of keeping the Cdbg funds because they were kind of last in and they carried their own set of requirements that were just different enough than the rest of the alphabet soup that was applied to the project, that we thought to be good stewards, we'd return those funds because we knew there were other projects in Missoula that were already going to be using Cdbg or could use them. And we could cover it with those ARPA funds that came in from the state. We're still trying to figure out how to put them in the projects. That's an IRS problem, not a problem for this committee, but we just felt like, again, being good stewards, it was really important. So any questions around that, I'm happy to answer.
That's really helpful, Heather. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much. Doesn't look like we have any more questions now. So if you want to proceed, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So the city of Missoula received $1.3 million in Home American Rescue Plan funds to primarily address homelessness and supportive service needs. This is separate from the ARP funds that will be administered through the city, and Home ARP is subject to the same regulations as our home program, with a few exceptions, and it is in addition to the home funds that we receive each year as an entitlement city. The allocation plan is in draft form. We want to stress that at this time, we do not have a specific project associated with the plan. This is merely a first step in determining specific needs in our community through presenting the plan for public comment. And as we move through the process, we will return to council for an amendment that will include a specific project or projects. One of the main stipulations of the home ARP funds is that they must primarily be used to help certain qualifying populations. And there's a list there on the screen. With home ARP, we can fund development of rental housing, supportive services, development of non-congregate shelter, tenant-based rental assistance, and the last two types of projects come with the stipulation that operating support and capacity building must be in conjunction with a home ARP activity. Since these are new funds, our timeline is a bit of a work in progress and will depend in part on how much collaboration is needed to fund projects. As of today, we've consulted with our local continuum of care. We've asked them to participate in a survey and to help us collect data to demonstrate the gaps and needs in our community. We've also engaged the public through a survey. The public hearing is an additional step to solicit public input. Our plan right now is to submit the allocation plan to HUD without a specific project in mind, and then include home ARP funding as part of the program year 2023 competitive application process. In the meantime, if an eligible project does come forward that we can fund with home ARP, we can forego the competitive application process. And I think Kendra's ready to take the next part.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump into a brief overview of the gaps and needs analysis. More details can be found in the allocation plan, which is available on Engage Missoula and our city website. Most of this data was pulled from existing reports and conversations with our community partners. By now, we all know the story. There's been a 109% increase in home prices in 11 years. Missoula is short 2,400 units. We have an incredibly low rental vacancy rate, which means, in short, Missoula's housing market is out of reach for the majority of us. But we're going to review some of the statistics we found related to those we can help with our HomeARC dollars, which is our QPs, our qualified, can't remember what QPs. I have cold, my brain's not working. The first QP will visit our homeless individuals. And we want to acknowledge that while we understand the importance of using unhoused instead of homeless, we're keeping with HUD terminology for this presentation. One way to survey homeless individuals is through the HMIS system, which is Missoula's comprehensive record of unhoused individuals receiving service from city agencies and local nonprofits. In January of 2020, there were 510 individuals seeking services. And a year later in 21, there were 666. And there are some reports that suggest that homelessness could increase by 40% in the coming years. Next, we'll turn to students experiencing homelessness. Data from Missoula County Public Schools shows that the total number of students experiencing houselessness or housing instability has more than doubled since the 2017-2018 school year. And the pandemic was cited as the biggest driver of this increase. The Associated Students of the University of Montana 2020 Real College Survey reported that 50% of students at the University of Montana who responded to the survey experienced housing insecurity in 2020, and 23% experienced homelessness. This is 7% and 9% higher, respectively, than other four-year institutions. Okay, so we're going to move on to the QPs fleeing domestic violence. Missoula's YWCA Pathways, a program that includes shelter and support for survivors of domestic and sexual violence, including dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, served a total of about 1,600 unduplicated individuals. Their crisis line helped an additional 1,500. And the YWCA reports that the link between domestic violence and family homelessness is vivid. 70% of the homeless families we see are headed by women, and domestic violence is a significant cause of their homelessness. Since opening its doors in spring of 2021, the YWCA Meadowlark has helped families faced with homelessness through their family housing center and by providing emergency housing to those who need it. YWCA Missoula anticipated serving more than double the numbers of families and children annually in their new facility. However, with the ongoing effects of the pandemic disproportionately affecting low-income homeless families, those numbers have been higher than anticipated. Not only that, but families now require longer stays in the shelter before they can achieve safe housing. Even with dramatically increased capacity to serve families in the Meadowlark, the need has at times outstripped resources. So HomeARC defines at-risk households in part as individuals or families who have incomes below 30% AMI. And for Missoula, this would be those with a household income of approximately $22,000 or less for a family of four. Additional risk factors for homelessness include paying more than 30% of your income on housing. And this is what you call cost burden. This chart shows that nearly 8,000 households earning less than $50,000 a year are cost burdened. In Missoula County, for those earning less than $35,000 a year, 82% of households are cost burdened. Severely cost burdened low-income households are more likely than other renters to sacrifice necessities like healthy food and healthcare to pay the rent, and they're more likely to experience unstable housing situations. So while we have a robust set of tools to help those at risk or who are unsheltered, in particular our QPs, we're consistently seeing a gap as well. While it's hard to quantify precise gaps, we did our best by looking at the number of emergency beds Missoula has versus the numbers of how homeless we're seeing. We have approximately 569 emergency beds, But as you recall, in 2021, we served 666 homeless individuals. We can also look at the housing choice voucher waitlists as another indication of gap. HCV, or the housing choice vouchers, provide rental subsidies for families earning very low incomes. The number of households on the HCV waiting list is another indicator of overall demand for affordable rental housing. Since 2015, the waitlist number has remained in the about 1,700 range, with a dip in 2021 indicative of households being unable to utilize the vouchers due to the low supply of units. Another looming gap that isn't often talked about has to do with housing units that have been subsidized by federal dollars. The University of Montana's Affordable Housing in Montana December 2020 report says that there are just over 2,000 units receiving some form of federal subsidy to keep them affordable. When federal dollars are given to help build affordable housing, the units have to remain affordable for a set number of years. And once those years are up, the building or units can be sold at market rate. So of Missoula's housing units receiving subsidies for affordability, 473, or about 23%, are set to have their subsidies expire in the next 10 years. Okay, so now that we're all sufficiently depressed, we'd like to encourage everyone to reach out with comments on our substantial amendment and our home ARP allocation plan. You could do so on Engage Missoula or by calling or emailing us. And while you're at it, you can check out the HUD required annual action plan, like was mentioned in our last presentation. And this report will go into more detail of our home and CDBG projects, and comments will be accepted through June 6th. Today, we're asking for a recommended motion to set a public hearing for May 23rd to review our substantial amendment and our home ARP allocation plan. And if you have any questions, Karen and I would love to try to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council or from the committee? All right, seeing nobody willing to jump up, any public comment? All right, I'm seeing no public comments, so I'll go back to council members and Ms. Anderson.
Thanks so much, Chair. And I'm happy to make a recommended motion and really appreciate all of the thorough explanation, which is, I think, why we don't have a lot of questions. And Kendra, feel better.
All right, thank you very much for the motion. Any other questions or comments from anybody? All right, seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote on the motion on the floor.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
10 yes, 0 no, motion is approved.
All right, thank you so much. That was the last item on our agenda. So I want to thank everybody for bearing with me as I muddled through chairing for the first time, but also more importantly, I think what a great new committee this is. And thanks to all of you who had the foresight in the rule process prior to some of us getting on council to create this. And it's clear that it's gonna be a good conduit for conversation. And on the theme of first, I also want to give a shout out to Ria, our staff member who ran her first council committee meeting and will be assigned to this committee. So thank you so much. Job well done. If there's nothing else from anybody, we will be adjourned.